You're lost, you know it? You wake up at 3 a.m. with that anxiety rising, your heart pounding in your chest, checking messages, waiting for replies, trying to decode every single word she said. You feel it in your bones. You feel it every single day. You compete for her attention with other men, you feel jealous, you explode emotionally, you try to explain yourself over and over again, you beg for validation like a desperate man. And the worst part, the part that really kills you inside, you think this is normal. You think this is just how it works. You think every man goes through this. But let me tell you a brutal truth, a truth that's going to hurt. You're being played. And you don't even realize it. You're a puppet on strings and you can't even see the strings. Most men live relationships like rats in emotional mazes, reacting to stimuli, chasing crumbs of affection, running in circles without understanding the real rules of the game, without understanding what's actually happening beneath the surface. And here's the problem, the real problem that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody taught you these rules. Nobody sat you down and showed you the deep, instinctive, raw psychology that governs attraction, power, and respect between men and women. Nobody explained how this actually works. But you know who understood this better than any modern relationship coach? Better than any pickup artist? Better than any dating guru selling you courses? Friedrich Nietzsche. A German philosopher from the 1800s who never made a YouTube video, never gave a seduction course, never promised you 10 steps to get any woman you want, but who saw human nature with a surgical coldness that still makes people uncomfortable today. He cut through all the illusions, all the pretty lies we tell ourselves. Nietzsche didn't see women as enemies. He didn't teach men to hate women or fear them. He saw them as natural forces with their own strategies, their own instincts, their own psychology that's completely different from ours. And he knew one thing, one fundamental truth. Whoever doesn't understand these strategies will be manipulated without even realizing it. You'll be controlled and you won't even know you're being controlled. So before you close this video and go back to your comfortable distractions, before you run away from what I'm about to tell you, let me ask you a question. Are you ready to see the naked truth about masculine power in relationships? Are you ready to have your illusions shattered? Because what I'm going to show you here isn't about tricks. It's not about ready-made phrases you can copy and paste. It's not about manipulation tactics. It's about internal transformation. It's about becoming the type of man who doesn't need to compete, who doesn't need to beg, who doesn't need to explain himself constantly. The type of man who simply is, who exists in his power naturally. And if you want that, if you're serious about this, subscribe to the channel right now, hit that bell icon so you don't miss anything, and comment down below the word power. Because this is for those who are tired of being played and want to start playing. This is for men who are done being victims. Let's get straight to the point. First rule, and this is fundamental, this is where everything begins. Power begins in emotional independence. Nietzsche said that the strong man is one who doesn't need external crutches to feel complete. He doesn't need validation from outside himself. And look at what happens with most modern men. Look at the pathetic state of masculinity today. They enter a relationship expecting the woman to fill their voids, expecting validation, expecting her to give meaning to their lives, expecting her to make them feel like men. And that's when disaster begins. That's when you sign your own death certificate. Because when you need her to feel good, when your emotional state depends on her mood, you give away your power. You hand it over on a silver platter. You become a hostage. Every word she says has too much weight. Every look, every unanswered message becomes an emotional earthquake that shakes your entire world. And she feels it. Women have an instinctive radar for emotional dependency. It's like a sixth sense they have. And you know what happens when she realizes you need her more than she needs you? When she understands that you're desperate, attraction dies. Simple as that. It evaporates like water in the desert. Power doesn't come from having the woman. Power comes from being complete without her. It's having a greater purpose, a mission that's bigger than any relationship, goals that go beyond getting female attention. When you're focused on building something real in your life, when you have a clear direction, when you're moving towards something meaningful, you naturally become less needy. And that, my friend, is pure magnetism. That's what creates real attraction. The woman feels that you're not there begging, you're there choosing. You're not desperate, you're selective. And that changes everything. That changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. Second rule, and pay attention to this because most men get this completely wrong. Don't react to emotional chaos. Nietzsche valued calmness as a form of mastery, as the ultimate demonstration of power. He knew that the man who loses emotional control loses authority. He loses respect. He loses everything. And look what happens in real life. Look at what you probably do. She arrives agitated, emotional, throwing provocations, creating drama out of absolutely nowhere. And you take the bait every single time. You start arguing, defending yourself, trying to convince her with logic. You think you can reason with emotion? Fatal mistake. Massive error. Because she's not testing your arguments. She doesn't care about your logic. She's testing your stability. She wants to see if you remain firm when the ground shakes. This is instinctive. This is hardwired into female psychology. She needs to know if you're the rock or if you're just another man who crumbles under pressure. Just another weak man who can't handle her energy. And when you react emotionally, when you enter her game, when you match her chaos with your chaos, you confirm you're not stable. You're just another one. You're no different from all the other guys. The man who understands this doesn't react. He observes. He breathes. He maintains center. He's like a mountain that doesn't move when the wind blows. And you know what that causes? Respect, deep, visceral respect. Because she realizes you cannot be moved. You cannot be shaken. And that is power. That is real masculine strength. Third rule, and this is where most men fail completely, have brutal awareness of your shadow. Nietzsche talked about facing your own demons, about not running from the dark parts of yourself, about integrating everything you've rejected and denied. And this is what separates boys from men. This is what separates the weak from the strong. Most guys have deep insecurities that they don't even admit to themselves. They bury them deep. Fear of not being good enough, fear of abandonment, fear of not being chosen, fear of being seen as weak or unworthy. And these insecurities stay there in the subconscious, in the shadows, controlling every reaction, every explosion of jealousy, every need for approval, every desperate attempt to prove themselves. And you know the worst part? She notices. Women see your unhealed wounds with frightening precision. They can smell insecurity like sharks smell blood in water. And instinctively they poke at those wounds. Not out of malice. Not because they're evil. But because they need to know, have you already resolved this, or are you still an unfinished project? Are you a complete man, or are you still a boy in a man's body? The man who does shadow work, who faces his insecurities head-on, who integrates his rejected parts, who looks at his demons in the eye, this man becomes impermeable. Nobody has power over him. Nobody can manipulate him. Because he already knows his weak points and transform them into strengths. This is internal work. This is the real work. This is real evolution. And most men will never do it because it's uncomfortable. Because it requires honesty that most people can't handle. Fourth rule, and this one is going to hurt a lot of egos. External competition is a sign of weakness. Nietzsche said, conquer yourself. The real battle is internal. And look at the ridiculous thing most men do. Look at how pathetic this is. They compete with other guys for a woman's attention. They keep comparing themselves. They keep trying to be better than the other guy. They get insecure when she talks about other men. They stalk social media profiles. They ask questions trying to figure out who the competition is. This is pathetic. This is the behavior of a weak man. Because when you compete externally, you've already assumed you're not enough. You've already put another man on a pedestal and lowered yourself. You've already lost. The man who understands power doesn't compete. He builds. He focuses on his own path. He becomes so absorbed in his own mission, so dedicated to his own growth, that other men simply cease to be relevant. They don't even register on his radar. And then an interesting thing happens, something almost magical. He becomes the prize. Because while others are fighting over crumbs, while they're competing for scraps of attention, he's building an empire. He's creating value. He's becoming someone significant. And women notice this. They notice the man who doesn't need to compete because he already knows his value. And that man stands out naturally. He doesn't need to try. He just is. Fifth rule, and this is controversial, but it's true: be dangerous but controlled. Here's a truth that will make many people uncomfortable. That will trigger a lot of people. Women are not attracted to harmless men. They're not attracted to safe, predictable, nice guys. They're attracted to potency, to a strong masculine energy but contained, to power that's controlled. Nietzsche understood this. He valued the man who had strength, who had capacity for violence and destruction, but didn't need to prove it all the time. Didn't need to constantly demonstrate it. The problem is that most men are either too weak, too soft, too passive, or they explode emotionally. Neither is attractive. Neither creates genuine desire. Weakness is obvious. Weakness repels women at a biological level. But emotional explosion is also weakness. It's lack of control. It's chaos without purpose. The truly powerful man has edge. He has a presence that says, I can, but I choose not to. I have the capacity for destruction, but I choose restraint. He has clear boundaries. He doesn't accept disrespect. He doesn't tolerate being treated poorly, but he doesn't need to yell, threaten, or make a scene to impose this. The strength is in the containment. It's in the look. It's in the posture. It's in the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you could, but you don't need to. And that is pure magnetism. That creates genuine attraction that lasts. Sixth rule, never explain yourself too much. Nietzsche valued silent strength. The strength of the man who doesn't need to justify himself. He knew that excessive explanation is seeking approval. It's weakness disguised as communication. And look what most men do. Look at this pattern. Something goes wrong and they start justifying themselves. Trying to convince her they didn't do anything wrong. Trying to prove innocence. Trying to make her understand. Trying. And every word that comes out is power being drained. Every explanation is energy being leaked. Because when you explain yourself too much, you're saying, I need your approval. I need you to see me a certain way. I need you to validate my choices. And that is weakness. That is the opposite of power. The strong man doesn't explain himself. He acts. His life speaks for him. His results speak for him. If she doesn't understand, that's her problem. He's not going to keep asking to be understood. He's not going to beg for comprehension. He simply is. And that creates fascinating tension. Because she can't figure you out. You're not predictable. You're not an open book. And that is attractive. That creates mystery. That creates intrigue. Seventh rule, your value is perceived in mystery. Women value what they cannot easily control, what they cannot fully understand. Nietzsche understood that the man who gives himself completely, who shows all his cards, who's too available, who's always there, this man loses charm. He becomes boring. Mystery isn't a game. Mystery isn't manipulation. Mystery is a natural consequence of having a rich life, of having purpose, of having parts of you that are just yours. Private parts of your soul that you don't share with everyone. The man who doesn't ask, who doesn't beg, who doesn't try to impress all the time, this man stands out naturally because he's not performing. He's not putting on a show. He's living. He's authentic. And she feels it. She realizes there are layers to him she hasn't explored yet, depths she hasn't discovered, and that creates lasting attraction. That creates genuine desire that doesn't fade after a few weeks. The mistake most men make is trying to win by showing everything at once, impressing with their whole resume, doing too much, talking too much, revealing too much, and then there's nothing left to discover. There's no mystery. There's no intrigue. Be the deep water, not the shallow puddle. Be the ocean, not the raindrop. Eighth rule, tests are inevitable, but you cannot break. Here's something most men don't understand, something that confuses them completely. She will test you. Not because she's evil, not because she's a terrible person, but because it's instinctive. It's hardwired. She needs to know if you're really solid or if you're just facade, if you're really strong or if you're just pretending. Nietzsche knew that life constantly tests, and relationships are no different. She will create situations to see if you crumble. She provoke to see if you lose control. She pull back to see if you beg. She push boundaries to see where you break. And in those moments you have two options, break or remain. If you break, if you despair, if you start doing everything to regain attention, you lose respect. And lost respect is almost impossible to recover. It's like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. But if you remain centered, if you maintain your posture, if you don't shake, if you stay calm in the storm, you gain emotional authority. She realizes this man cannot be moved. This man is solid. This man is real. And that is attractive. That creates deep respect. Ninth rule, respect is more important than affection. Nietzsche valued internal hierarchy and posture. He knew that affection without respect sustains nothing. It's empty. It's meaningless. And look at the mistake most men make. Look at this trap. They desperately seek affection. They want to be loved. They want constant affection. They want her to always be sweet and nice. And in the process, in the desperate chase for affection, they lose respect. Because affection is volatile. Affection comes and goes like the weather. But respect? Respect is the foundation. Respect is what holds everything together. When she respects you, she may not always agree with you, but she doesn't challenge you destructively. She doesn't disrespect you publicly. She doesn't cross major boundaries. She doesn't treat you like a child. And you know how you earn respect? Not by begging for affection. Not by lowering yourself to get emotional crumbs, but by maintaining standards, maintaining posture, keeping your word, being consistent, following through. The man who prioritizes respect creates a solid relationship. The man who prioritizes only affection creates an emotional roller coaster that eventually crashes. 10th rule, silence as a weapon of power. Nietzsche understood that talking too much gives away control. It dilutes your presence. And most men don't know how to use silence. They're uncomfortable with it. They feel the need to fill every second with words, explanations, justifications, attempts to impress, stories about themselves, and that dilutes presence. That makes you forgettable. Silence creates tension. Silence creates space for her to feel you. Silence communicates, I don't need to perform. I don't need to prove anything. I'm comfortable in my own skin. When you're comfortable in silence, you demonstrate emotional control. You demonstrate confidence. You demonstrate that you're not desperate for approval. And she feels that viscerally. She feels it in her bones. Learn to use silence. Learn not to react immediately. Learn to pause. Learn to let things breathe. That is power. That is control. 11th rule, truth above her emotions. Nietzsche valued reality over comfortable illusions. He valued what is true over what feels good. And here's a modern masculine problem, a massive failure of modern men. Men abandon reality to validate female emotions. She's emotional about something that objectively doesn't make sense, something that's clearly not true. And instead of keeping his perception firm, instead of standing in his truth, he agrees. He validates. He distorts his own reality to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. This is weakness. This is betrayal of yourself. Reality doesn't change because someone is emotional about it. Facts don't care about feelings. And the man who abandons his perception of truth to please, this man loses himself. He becomes a ghost. You can be kind. You can be empathetic. You can acknowledge her feelings. But you cannot give up truth. You cannot abandon your perception of reality. Because when you do that, you lose respect. Hers and yours. Keep your perception firm. Don't be cruel, but be honest. Stand in your truth. 12th rule, never abandon your world to live in hers. Your purpose is your center. Your mission is your anchor. Nietzsche said, become who you are. Find yourself. Create yourself. And most men do the opposite. They enter a relationship and abandon goals, abandon friends, abandon hobbies, abandon mission. Everything to live in her world. Everything to be the perfect boyfriend. And then something interesting happens, something predictable. She loses attraction because she doesn't want a satellite. She doesn't want a moon orbiting around her. She wants a planet. She wants to orbit around a man who has his own gravity, his own pull, his own force. When you maintain your purpose, when you keep building your empire, when you stay focused on your mission, she adapts to your rhythm. And that's natural. That's how it should be. But when you abandon everything to be the perfect boyfriend, when you make her your entire world, you become boring. You become suffocating. Because you have nothing left besides her. And that's not attractive. That creates pressure. Keep your world. Expand your world. Invite her to be part of it. But never abandon it. Never make her your entire existence. 13th rule, the supreme power is being ready to walk away. Detachment isn't coldness. Detachment isn't not caring. Detachment is strength. It's freedom. Nietzsche understood that the man who is trapped is a slave. And most men are trapped by fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not finding another woman. Fear of starting over. Fear of the pain of separation. And that fear traps them in toxic relationships, in destructive dynamics, in situations that drain the soul, that kill the spirit slowly. The man who has real power is the man who is willing to walk away. Not because he wants to, not because he doesn't care, but because he can, because he values himself enough to leave situations that don't serve him. And she feels it. She feels when you're there by choice, not by desperation, not by neediness. And that changes the whole dynamic. That changes everything. Because when you're ready to walk away, you don't accept disrespect. You don't tolerate manipulation. You don't stay in places where your value isn't recognized. And that's not selfishness. It's self-preservation. It's dignity. It's self-respect. 14th rule, observe patterns, not words. Nietzsche valued behavior over discourse, actions over promises. And here's a hard truth that most men need to hear: words lie. Easily, constantly, beautifully, but behavior reveals real intention. Behavior shows what someone actually values. Most men are deceived because they listen to words and ignore actions. She says one thing, does another, and he believes the words. She promises change, but the pattern continues, and he believes the promises. He wants to believe so badly that he ignores reality. This is naivety. This is foolishness. The man who understands human psychology observes patterns. He watches what she does, not what she says. He sees what she does when nobody's watching. He sees how she acts under pressure. He sees if actions align with words over time. And he protects himself based on that. Based on reality, not on wishful thinking. Don't be cynical. Don't be paranoid, but be realistic. Observe, pay attention. 15th rule, master desire, don't be a slave to pleasure. Nietzsche talked about channeling energy, about sublimation, about not being governed by impulses. And most modern men are slaves. Complete slaves. Slaves to pornography, slaves to sexual validation, slaves to instant pleasure, slaves to dopamine hits, and that drains vital force. That drains masculine energy, because every time you give in to impulse without control, you train weakness. You train inability to delay gratification. You train yourself to be weak. And that reflects in everything. In your discipline, in your focus, in your presence. The man who masters his desire, who directs sexual energy toward creation, toward construction, toward mission, this man has a different presence. He radiates something different. He radiates containment. He radiates purpose. He radiates power, and women feel it. They sense it immediately. Don't be the man who lives chasing pleasure. Don't be the addict. Be the man who uses energy to build something greater, something meaningful. 16th rule, you are the prize, not her. This is the mindset shift that transforms everything. This is the revolution. Nietzsche said, become who you are. Know your value. Build yourself into something valuable. And most men operate from the wrong place. They treat the woman as the prize and themselves as competitors. They try to prove value. They try to impress. They try to be chosen. They put her on a pedestal and themselves in the dirt. And that inverts everything. That destroys attraction. When you internalize that you are the prize, when you truly believe that you're the valuable one, your energy changes. Everything changes. You stop performing. You stop trying so hard. You simply are, and you start selecting. You start being the chooser, not the chosen. You start observing, does she deserve my time? Does she deserve my energy? Does she add value to my life? Does she deserve to be part of my world? And this shift in perspective changes your presence. It changes how you show up, because you stop asking permission to exist and start occupying space naturally. You stop apologizing for being a man and start owning it. Now let's tie all this together. Let's bring it home. Masculine power isn't about techniques. It's not about ready-made phrases you memorize. It's not about manipulation tactics or mind games. Masculine power begins within. It begins with internal work. It begins with facing your shadows. It begins with building purpose. It begins with emotional independence. It begins with self-respect. Nietzsche wasn't teaching men to manipulate women. He wasn't teaching men to be assholes or players. He was teaching men to become complete, to become strong, to become whole, to become impermeable. And when you do that, when you truly do the work, relationships stop being battlefields. They stop being sources of anxiety. They become a natural consequence of who you are. They flow naturally from your value. You stop being played and start playing. Not because you learn tricks, not because you memorize scripts, but because you transformed, because you became a different man. So let me ask you a question, and be honest with yourself. Are you acting like the man who chooses or like the man who begs? Are you living from your center, or are you reacting emotionally to everything happening around you? Are you building something greater, or are you just trying to win female attention? Are you focused on your mission, or are you focused on being liked? These questions are uncomfortable. I know, they hurt. They cut deep. But you don't need to like the truth. You just need to see it. And once you see it, once you truly see it, you can't pretend you don't know anymore. You can't go back to sleep. You have two options: keep being played or start evolving. Keep being a victim or become powerful. Applying these rules won't be easy. It will require self-control. It will require discipline. It will require deep internal work that most men will never do. But in the end, you stop being a hostage. You stop being predictable. You stop being just another one. You stop being forgettable. And you become the man who respects himself. The man who doesn't need to compete. The man who doesn't need external validation. The man who simply is. If this video moved you, if you felt something shift inside you, if you felt you need this transformation, comment down below the word evolution. I want to know who's really willing to do the work. Who's ready to stop making excuses and start changing. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon, share this with that friend who needs to hear this message. Because this isn't entertainment. This isn't just content. This is a call for men who are tired of living in emotional mediocrity. Men who want self-control, respect, and real internal power. Men who are done being victims and ready to become powerful. The community is growing every single day, and you can be part of it. See you in the next video.